Hi, I'm back, and sorry for the interruption. Um, I had an announcement over the intercom, so that's the reason for that. Um, but I was giving you a little brief history about myself and what I'm doing, and I began to talk about um, my first two teachers. Now, all of this was basically in a classroom situation. It was, group learning. The teacher give you an assignment, you do exercise 3, and come back next week, we'll do exercise 5. And I was relating to you about the fact that I learned basically how to read my music notes in my general music class. I didn't learn in my band class. Now, that's what I remember. I remember writing in the notes above the note, and it wasn't until I was in that general music class that I really learned, made the connection between how I fingered the note and the notes on the page. And I was talking about getting sick, and I was so sick, and I told you about if you want to look at that video, it should say something like Storytime 1 Part 2. So that's Storytime 1 Part 2 if you want to go back and listen to it. But now this is Storytime 3, Storytime 1 Part 3. It's kind of hard to keep track of all this, but that's what it is. Storytime 1 Part 3. So I was talking about, practicing, and I remember going all the way through the method book. I remember just being able to go all the way through the method book and just really trying hard. And I remember my sister, who at that time, when I was in 7th grade, she was in the 8th grade, and she played clarinet. And she was first chair. She was a pretty good player. She was first chair. She didn't go on to be a professional musician. She didn't even go on to high school. She stopped in junior high. But I remember her telling me about there was this thing called all region, and I had never heard of all region. I didn't really understand what it was all about. But now I think this was Miss Wilcox. I think this was Miss Wilcox that did this. I'm fairly certain this is her. What she would do, she would give you the music, and she gave us, each one of us. It was either you requested it or she gave it to you. I don't really remember, but I remember receiving the music for that year for our region and an audio cassette of what was required for that year and the scales. Now, keep in mind, I wasn't a real strong reader. I could recognize the notes, but I wasn't a real strong reader. And so she gave us the music and everything. And usually when you do what they call tryouts, you try out for the all-region band, they give you, well, let me back up. Let me express to you what all-region is. All-region is, to me, it was a prestigious honor to be a member of the all-region band. You compete for a chair in an orchestra or band or choir. And so they have a certain number of people. For example, maybe for the first band they'll have 4 baritones euphonium. Maybe the second band they have 4 baritones euphonium. So only 8 people in that particular region could qualify for that. And they base your scores on the music, your prepared music, They base the scores on your scales, and they base the score on sight reading. And you had to, you had to, you know, in your score placement determines, what your score determines what chair you make. So if you have the highest score, you're going to be first band, first chair. If you have the next highest score after, whoever made the highest, then you're first band, second. And so if you don't score high enough for any of the bands, you just don't make it that year. And so I tried out for all region, and I'm just gonna tell you what I did. I took that tape, I wore that tape out. I had the little sheet of music that she gave us, I wore that out. It was in tatters when I got finished with it. I folded it up and put it in my case. I didn't even have the book that it come from. I think it came from, oh man, I can't remember the name of it. It was one of those Rubank books. It was one of those Rubank books. That's what it was. This Rubank Intermediate Method. I think that's what it is. And that's the exercise that it came from. And it was pretty challenging. It wasn't easy. It wasn't supposed to be a cakewalk. It was supposed to be difficult. And they'll ask for a major scale or minor scale, and they give you all the scales they're going to ask for. And because it was junior high, they only asked for one octave. So if they ask for G minor scale, you go from G to G and that kind of thing. And they didn't require you to do 2 octaves in junior high. So I had, if I'm not mistaken, I had I want to say I had 2 months, because I had got sick at the very beginning of the year. So I had 2 months, and usually do the all-region tryouts, I think it's a little bit before Christmas break. It's either before Christmas break or after. So you have plenty of time. So I just wore that tape out. I wore the tape out. And I made second band first chair. I think they had 30 kids, 40 kids trying out on baritone. And for someone that has never had any lessons to make second band first chair, it was pretty good. I was in the 8th grade. I got sick in my 8th grade year, so I'm in the 8th grade. After having gotten sick, I got second band first chair. And if I had known how to sight read, I probably would have got, first band first. Because I'm pretty sure, I wish I had kept my score sheets, that my prepared piece was probably perfect. It was probably perfect. And I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you that's the only thing I could do, really, was the prepared piece. I remember going to the tryout, and some of you may identify with this. I remember going to the tryout and say, I don't remember what scale they asked you, but let's say it was G minor like I was talking about before. And I say, get around to somebody I think pretty smart, and I say, how do you finger G minor? What are the notes in the scale? And I would figure out how to play the scale at the tryout. Let that sink in. I would figure out how to play the scale at the tryout. And so you can probably imagine how my scale score looked, and you could probably imagine how my sight reading looked, because I was not a strong sight reader. So I made second band first, and there was a young man that was in our band, and he made, I want to say he made first band first or first band second. He was a pretty good player. He made first band second or first, something like that. And he was in the 9th grade, and so I think he ended up moving. So he made first band first, first band second, or something like that. And I said to myself, I said, next year, I'm going to make first band first cheer. That's what I said. So I'm going to make first band first. Because I said he's going to the 10th grade. And so I'm going to, make first band first. All right. I'll be back. Phone call.